It's raining goats here in Adelaide. 2 weeks ago, it's Bryce Cotton to Adelaide 36ers. Last week, it's Craig Goodwin, the Adelaide United goat, returning home. It's getting to the stage where I'm going to email Peter Malinauskas and ask him to change Adelaide, the city of churches, to Adelaide, the goat city. Speaking of goats, this is Ross. I'm Liam. This is Two Loose Cannons. Who's the next goat to sign for an Adelaide-based team?
An Adelaide-based team. It's either going to be Wanganeen Milera or well, it's a good question actually. I reckon Wanganeen Milera. I reckon he's likely to come home. So I think he'll be the next one. I'm hoping to Port because I don't think you guys have got the salary cap.
The salary cap's there, but it's whether or not he wants to pull on the red.
Well, exactly. That's a good question, whether he wants to do that.
Because I think, again, every rumour that I've heard, you've probably heard more, he's leaning towards the teal, black, silver line.
Yeah, so, exactly. So, I mean, look, he's obviously Cav's nephew, and he's the cousin of Miller who plays for you, bloke. So, and there's family connections at both clubs.
So any problems with squeezing in the salary cap? Because last week we saw some issues with Geelong.
If it was Rhea Ripley coming back, we'd have problems fitting with the salary cap, but it's not. It's just... So I was just thinking of guys that might come back there. So, I don't think we will, because we have got space. They're talking about being able to get Butters in easily. Plus, if they lose Bergman, they'll have that room and Bergman would have to be sitting around the high fives to low sixes.
Yeah.
So there's definitely room. If we lose Bergman, and that's probably the easiest swap I could think of, is Bergman goes to St Kilda, Wanganeen Milera comes here, and we might give him a pick or another player or something like that.
Nice.
It's just basically straight over and everything's fine, and he takes maybe an extra 100,000 on top of what we're paying Bergman anyway.
So we're not going to have a Geelong issue here?
Well, Geelong issues, geez. So parties, I tell you.
Brings me to what our top five is this week. It's the top five salary cap cheating scoundrels. You want to roll with your top five?
Well, I'm going to go with Carlton from 2002. Now, listen to these numbers. That's a record. They lost $897,500. They forfeited priority picks in 2002. They forfeited first and second round picks in the national draft in 03 and 04. And they, so in total, it was like 1.37 million. Yeah, that was a salary cap breach between 98 and 2001. So, that was pretty huge, that one. That has to be number one. For number two, I've gone with my favourite team of all, the good old mighty Adelaide Crows, who were fined $300,000, and they were barred from the first two rounds and for taking father son selections in 2013. So this happened in 2012. This was around the our good mate Kurt Tippett. This was for unauthorised payments of $170,000 to Kurt Tippett. So you could just see these cheating dogs. He copped an 11-match ban. The CEO's trick copped a suspension until June 30th and was fined $50,000. Former football manager John Reid, he also copped a suspension until June 30th of 2013, and so did their footy manager Phil Harper, copped the same suspension until June of 30. So I thought that was quite, to be suspending officials, it's one thing to suspend players who were involved in it, but suspending officials as well was... And I think we can debate whether or not it was actually there. I think most people think they went really hard on you.
They did.
But for someone like me, I thought they didn't go hard enough. Estimated in 1996, were fined at that time. It was a record $638,000. They breached this. They also were fined by the taxation department for breaches. They forfeited their first and second round picks in the national draft in 97, and also the preseason draft and rookie drafts. Then we moved to Sydney, and Sydney copped it's only a small fine, This is in 92. So it was a $50,000 fine. And this was for payments to Greg Williams during the 1990 season. And Williams copped a suspension for 6 matches and was also fined $25,000 for accepting the payments. And finally, now this one wasn't actually breached and no one got fined, but this was the one that actually set the whole third party, brought it to the notice of the AFL. The AFL said enough, and that was Chris Judd in 2012. So they actually started putting regulations around because Vizzy was paying him huge amounts of money to show up 3 times a week, I believe it was. And this is when the AFL finally said enough. You got to get value for money. You can't be paying someone $100,000 for showing up for, 3 times a week for an hour at a time, whatever it was. I'm not sure what the breach was, but it wasn't a lot. He wasn't there a long time and he was getting huge money. So that was the one that changed the landscape for third-party agreements. And this is probably how Geelong get themselves in trouble.
So we talk about Geelong being salary cap cheats. Are you prepared to stick your neck out on the line right here, right now? Number 1, number 5 on your list was Carlton. Are Carlton the biggest scummy cheats of all time?
I think they used to. I'll go back to the Elliott era. I think that was there were a lot of, if you listen to a lot of the ex-players, and it wasn't just them, there's a lot of ex-players that would tell you about being handed bags of money, especially in the VFL. Yeah. And look, we've spoken to enough SANFL players to know that happened here. Yeah. So it was footy in general. Let's face it. Let's not split hairs here. Footy in general, back in those 80s, 90s, I'm sure even in the 70s. I was talking to John Cahill and he was telling me about a patron of the club back in the 50s palming him a $50 note, like shaking his hand, and there was a $50 note in his hand, I used to hang quite close with John Cahill's son, Scott. So, we used to chat all the time. And some of the stories he told you, it was happening everywhere. Are they the biggest? They've certainly been caught, probably.
Caught the most. Yeah.
But that comes with someone, like I say, if you've got John Elliott and he's the owner and chairman of the board of Vizzy, and he's happy to toss money into it, and he's happy to get Judd there, and he's happy to, give him a few extra bucks in a paper bag. Well, then that's the way business was done.
Just to close this off, are we prepared to say that salary cap cheating is not happening today?
No, I don't believe that at all. I don't believe this salary cap cheating is not happening at all. I believe there's some really creative numbers being done.
Yeah.
And the more creative you can be, the more you fly under the radar.
The harder it is to trace.
That's right. It is harder to trace. And it gets really, really, like the waters get really murky when you start adding these third-party agreements. So this is where I'd just like the AFL just go, enough. Like, this is your salary cap. This is your payments. That's it. But I also understand these guys are a business now. They're not players anymore. They're a business. They're a brand. You talk about, Petrarca talks about his brand. A lot of players now talk about their brand. We see Bailey Smith running around with a sweatband and everybody's buying sweatband. They were in Western Australia, they were Perth. And you looked at the crowd and half of them were wearing the sweatbands. They were handing him out at the Geelong Bulldogs game, pre-game.
Yeah.
He's become a business all to himself, and that's, and good on him. That's what you want. This is Americanizing the sports though. And this is now the problem. This is where all this stuff creeps in now, because it becomes more important to have success, because success breeds sponsorships and people coming into your club and more membership and all that sort of stuff. So it has that roll-on effect. And with that can possibly come the corruption side of it as well.
Yeah.
Because to stay on top, you need to get these guys into your club.
And look, there's been no problems with Adelaide United and Craig Goodwin coming on board. He's come here for family, I'm sure.
Right. That's right.
I'm sure he'll still be the Australian market player and he'll still be compensated quite well. But that's a fantastic signing.
It is a fantastic
quality human being.
And look, the thing with Adelaide United though is they build on youth.
Yeah.
I mean, their next coach was basically the youth coach.
Yeah.
So he brought that youth through, all those players that are now playing, all the young guys who are now playing.
And that's the guy I want shaping the culture. That's right. And Adelaide, heart and soul Adelaide.
The question to you is Adelaide United a feeder side to Europe?
Of course,
the rest of the
they've
world,
set
or
their
are
bus-
they?
They have.
They're a business here.
Yeah, they've set themselves up to do that, and that's not a bad thing. I still think that they can garner success. Is it long-term success in terms of competing every year in the top four? Probably not. They're going to have their ups, they're going to have their downs. I think the supporters understand that as long as we're still striving to win.
Yep.
And it gets a bit frustrating with supporters where you get there or thereabouts and then we have a sell-off.
That's right.
And then
That's
we
what
go
happened.
backwards. And it's happened. Yeah, it has
And that's what happened. Yeah.
and it's going to happen because I can see, Archie Goodwin going soon, golden boot at his age.
Yep.
Kikianis had that brilliant under-21s campaign for Australia.
He did.
Again, he's a modern ball-playing central defender. But then we don't have those in Australia. That's a rarity. He stands out.
The good thing is does that make other youth around the country take notice and think, hang on, Adelaide United have now got six
Of
players.
course it has. Yeah.
Six players last year are now playing in Europe mid-season too.
Yep. Of course it has, because the whole point of getting Archie Goodwin down from Newcastle was we were going to give him game time.
Yeah.
He got that game time. He's had a
It's
breakout
got
season.
Yeah.
He might not be sold in this transfer window, but I could assure you that he's gone in the January transfer window.
And look, at the end of the day, if it's my business, you're there to make money, aren't you?
Yeah.
But you also don't want to put the local, because you've also got to have a local support. There'd be nothing worse than Adelaide than Highmarsh Stadium, being empty because people are rocking up.
And I don't think it will.
Well, I agree with you. We love that.
And we love the fact that Craig Goodwin's coming to.
Yeah, that's it. And if you keep bringing guys like that back, and these guys are willing to come back, and like you said, it's more for probably family reasons.
Yeah.
It'd be great to see him back.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So let's get to our questions. You've got the first question.
Yeah, so the first question came from Mama Bear, and she wanted to know, was Sydney that poor or were Adelaide that good? So I guess this is your backyard. So
did you watch the game?
I didn't. Okay. Unfortunately, I did miss the game.
Right, because this is going to sound bizarre because we're talking that a game that finished 90-point margin and everyone's talking about Sydney being rubber, but they came to play. That first 10 minutes to 30 minutes was highly contested. It was Sydney what you expected.
Yeah.
I looked at the numbers and it was like something like mid-40s to 50s contested possession count at the end of the first quarter. And I think the game finished around about 140, 150 contested possessions. Right throughout that game, both teams' pressure ratings were sitting at 200 for the entire game.
Yeah.
What Sydney lacks is bit of dare, bit of skill from that back line. They kept getting caught when the ball came into our forward line. They couldn't transition it out.
Okay.
And so they were turning the ball over in horrible spots and just putting their back line under such pressure. So, look, I don't think Sydney were as bad as what they were made out to be.
Goals is...
Yeah. So, look, I don't know, again, because you didn't see the game, and I'm sure we talked about it off camera.
Yep.
I'm not even sure if you're fully aware of the Milera quote. So Milera had come out and said on ABC radio that Sydney were a rabble. They were arguing amongst themselves.
Yep.
And then Tim Silver's come out the day after because Jack Rewalt on Fox Footy said that it was disrespectful.
Yep.
And then Tim Silvers came out and apologised. Milera apologised to the airport returning from Sydney. What's your point of view on a player calling an opposition team a rabble?
Look, you know what? The thing that gets me is we want these guys to be as honest as they can, and when they are honest, we smash them.
Yeah.
So if he honestly believes Sydney are a rabble, now that doesn't mean you have to go out and you have to say Sydney are a rabble, obviously. But if that's his thoughts, then what is there to say that Sydney aren't a rabble this year alone?
Yeah.
We're not talking over the journey of Sydney. We're talking about this year. Now, are they a rabble or are they just not clicking into Cox's gameplay? Because he said at the beginning of the year, the thing that's cost them in these grand finals is that they come up against these explosive teams that have got pace, and they've been blown away because their whole game plan was around defending first and scoring second. So they were that dour team that would hold you and stop you from scoring. But when you start getting the Brisbanes and the Collingwoods and all these teams that have blown them away on grand final day, and they didn't play Collingwood, by the way, just in case someone wants to correct me. But these teams that are winning grand finals, they're all high pace, can score quickly, and can defend. Sydney could only do one of those things, and that was defend.
Yeah.
So they were winning games during the year, and we know that. I know that as a Port supporter, it's easy. Well, I would say it's easy, but we were rattling 15, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 games wins in the the season, and you roll into the finals, and your game plan doesn't hold up. So, and that's what was happening to them. So I understand Coxie coming in and going, we need to move this ball faster, but this is a team who spent. Most of them would have spent at least 10 years under Longmire or Roos.
Yeah, and
it was the same game plan going from
it's the injuries.
It is the injuries, and I agree with you. If they had their best 22, 23, 24, whatever it is, it'd be a different team. That's for sure. But we always hear from sides, next man up.
Yeah, you do.
There are teams who have had horrific injuries, just like Sydney did, and yet they managed to get through a season and win premiership. Richmond's one team I think of at the top of my head, who one season were just absolutely devastated by injuries, and yet they just picked off the wins, got these guys back later in the year, built to the finals, and then pulled it off in the end. So it has to. You have to have that next man up mentality. If you're saying, "No, our injuries are too big, are huge," look at Collingwood. Collingwood had some injuries, and but they managed to stay the course. They managed to win the games, and then they get all these guys back, and they look 200% better than what they did the week before. They did, because they get these guys back in. So you can't say, "Oh, it's horrific injuries." Every team has injuries.
Yeah, look, I want to cycle back.
So then it's depth.
Yeah, depth. I want to cycle back to Tim Silver's coming out and apologising. Does he need to apologise? That's pretty gutless.
Well,
it's pretty spineless.
You do in this day and age. You do in this day and age. He can't stand there and back Milera.
Oh, I think he can.
He can't. Not as a CEO of a club, you can't.
You
can't turn around and go, "He's exactly spot on. You are a rebel."
The only effect it's going to have is the next time we play Sydney will come out, stick it on the board, his messaging, and they'll come out fire.
I cannot believe you've got that mentality.
Oh,
I do think you should take Milera in.
Yeah, I think they should. And
I don't necessarily think Milera said the wrong thing. He just, to me, Silver doesn't have to say a word. Don't say a word. You don't have to come out.
But that's the thing. And so why apologize?
So don't say anything. But don't back the player in.
No, I'm not saying out gold stamp. We certified what he's saying. This is what we stand for. But you just ignore the noise.
That's right. You just ignore the noise.
All they're doing is making the club look stupid.
If Milera comes out and says, "You know what? I said it. I apologise. I didn't mean it. Swear at the moment." Whatever you want to say.
Because I'm angry about it.
That's fine. I understand. And the way you're speaking, it sounds like you're angry about it. But still, the mistake Silver makes is that he thinks he needs to get on the front foot and make the club look good by saying, "Hey, look, he didn't mean that." Let Milera do that.
Yeah, then the coach football club stop bending over to the AFL.
Yeah,
stop pandering to the noise that comes from the media. Grow a spine. Stand up. Ignore the noise.
Is it the fact that it was Silver who came out? If Nix had come out and said, "You know what, I contacted Coxie and I said, look, mate, that's not the belief of the club," would you have been that fired up, or is it because it's Silver that came out and said it?
Well, I'm fired up because it's Silver's. He didn't need to come out and say that.
That's right. So it's the messenger. It's not the message.
You know what this is? They had a bad week media-wise. They had, Drury, the development player, say something about women caught on camera. They had the leak picture messaging. This is, a need to come out and make it look like that we're clean. Look, at the end of the day, this is something they didn't need to worry about.
Yeah,
this is just an overreaction.
No, I agree with you. It's a comment that a player makes that we won't get. Which one was it?
Nick. Sorry, Jack.
So Jack gets on the front foot and says that's disrespectful. When he says that, it makes it a big thing.
Yeah, it's interesting to know. Most of the journalists that come out, and even journalists from different sports have come out and supported and said, this is actually what we want.
That's what you want. Exactly. So don't come out and smack him for telling you the truth. And when you say we want these players to tell us
the likes of Gary Lyon on commentary saying much worse than what Milera said.
Yeah. I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Miller's message wasn't the wrong thing. No. But Silver should have stayed silent.
And as
once he speaks, he can't be back in the middle.
As a Crows supporter, I've watched Sydney and look, they gobbed off so much on Saturday night. I could not believe they're down by 70-odd points and they're getting into Rochelle. They're really giving him a hard time. Sydney had more effective sledges on the ground than kicks. They were pathetic.
Is that a stat?
Far out. No, well, go back, watch. I wrote down sledge. And I could count the effective kicks on my hands that they had on Saturday night.
Well,
Look, maybe that's why they lost the game.
Yeah.
Lost their heads.
Well, and that's it.
I'm losing my head here.
What can you do? I mean, look, you obviously can't drop your head and you've got to make it look like you're at least got something.
But
again, you've got a spine. I don't know.
That's from the school of Mac Andrew, fake tough.
Well,
you're 7 points down. Take your bloody lick. Get on with it.
Definitely. But there's some big egos at Sydney. Let's not forget this. They might be down. They might be down, but there's still some big egos.
Chad Watermate talks all that.
Yeah. So
anyway, let's move on.
Yeah,
I can talk about this all night. So Ross Lyon's off to Vegas.
Well, what a comment.
Is it a coincidence that Melbourne kicked one goal 12 in the final half to gift St Kilda the game? So the question is Ross Lyon, did he have that trip to Vegas booked before the 112 or after the 112? Is this a heat check on his luck?
I think he had the trip booked before, and it just happened to be.
Can you be certain?
Well, I can't be certain. I'll check with his what's the name? His flight center to see if when he went in and good on your flight center. And when he went in and he booked the trip, but I'm certain it would have been before the game and not after. But maybe it was mid-game. Maybe he saw the writing on the wall and was thinking, "Hey, my luck's in. I'm going to Vegas." And booked it at half time while the line coaches were talking to the boys.
I thought that's the cheeky move. He's in his press conference. He's masterminded a win that the opposition's handed to him on a gold platter, and he's talking about company.
He's got a nepo baby I'm going to Vegas. No, he didn't win the Super Bowl, mate.
And on the flip side, Melbourne.
Well, Melbourne, you're right.
Talking about handing a game away.
You're right. 112. I did actually watch that one, and that was like, what is going on here? Like, seriously.
They're going to look back at that at the end of the year.
It could be. Yeah, you're right. In a tight season where every win matters, that could be the one they look back on. You're right. It could be the one they look back on and go, oh, yeah.
You got a question about West Coast?
That could be the one that sees Cozzy Pickett coming to Port Adelaide too.
Or was it you finished there? I just closed shop.
So West Coast, mate. I got a question from Rhino that says West Coast had 3 good weeks. You're willing to say anything nice about them?
Are you kidding?
The Eagles have. The Eagles have had 3 good weeks. Are you willing to say anything nice about them?
Is that question directed to me?
It is directed to you. You've been savage on them, and I believe you've even had some feedback from a couple of West Coast supporters.
Yes, I have.
With you.
I have.
With some thoughts. We'll start calling you Kano soon.
Well, the thing is, do we hand out participation trophies now? Are we in the system? Because, look, Adelaide last week, they played a Hollywood type of brand of football, completely disrespected. I saw the same thing happen. Did you watch the Geelong West Coast game?
I did. I watched. Yeah. That was a good game. I got to admit,
that was a good game.
For 3 quarters, they had me absolutely in there. I thought they were good. They were competitive for 3 quarters, and then that last quarter, But the minute, who was it? Was it Dwayne Russell? Someone mentioned that Geelong were the best last quarter team in the
yeah.
And that pretty much, from then on, it was just nail in the coffin. They just went bang, bang.
The way I summed up that game was, did you know it wasn't until the last quarter before there was a repeat stoppage in the game? That tells you how much pressure Geelong brought to that game. They came for a holiday.
Yeah.
It was Western Australia Day the next day. They probably spent the day and checked out the festivities.
Could have, yeah. Look, it did look like a team. Geelong did look like a team who rolled in thinking we're just going to get points going. But I actually thought West Coast were pretty good for 3 quarters.
Yeah. Well,
unlike you, they're crap every week.
They're crap.
Yeah. So you're not willing to say anything nice about West Coast?
No.
About the Eagles?
I'm going to shut the Eagles down.
And
the West Coast Eagles.
Nice
no,
about
the only Eagles we're going to mention on here is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay.
Go Birds. So, you want to hear this question? This question has come from a special guest. Now, I can't confirm or deny it's the person who has put the name to it. It's come from Roy King.
Roy King. Okay.
From Cork Island.
Cork Island.
Yeah, so this could potentially be our first celebrity question.
All right.
So it's a long one, so make sure you're paying attention.
All right. I'm already switched off.
Like most of my watches. So, Ross, have you got something against the Irish? Or are you just desperate to hear yourself talk? That joke last week, was that your idea of funny, was it? Because I've seen traffic cones with better timing than that. And then you start laying into my friend Markeen, like he stole your lunch. That's how you're putting in a shift, and you're saying you're taking jabs at him like you're Mike Tyson, or you're a stand-up on a stand-up night in Blackpool. Honestly, I'm just wondering now, are you ready to say you're wrong about King? Sorry, this is a joke.
Can't be. Can't be, Roy. You've been in this, Roy. Still listening, Liam.
You threw me off there. Or do you want to dig deeper and insult the entire island while you're at it?
Well, I would like to just tell all those ringers in Ireland.
Hey, settle down.
Keep walking off that jetty, okay, guys? Nah, seriously, Roy, come on, mate. A joke's a joke. Yeah, I mean, you can say an Aussie joke. I don't know if there are any good Aussie jokes, but you can come back at me with an Aussie joke.
Look, terrible week for you to be wearing this when you're going to write a question. You're dead.
Yeah. You know, my parents are Italian, so any Aussie jokes aren't going to really bother me. But
no, but this.
But great to have you on the show, Roy. Pleased that you decided to write us a good question. Too bad Liam mucked it up for you. But no, I don't have. We love the Irish. The Italians love.
Of course we do.
You know how many Italian blokes have married Irish over the years?
Yes.
So you know, and goes the other way too.
Well, I can tell you, Roy Keane ain't returning after this week.
Well, yeah, I think Roy, you need to retire, mate. You're retired, just stay retired. That's fine. It'll be a good idea.
All right.
So my next question is: are you happy for Aurelio Vidmar and Sydney and Melbourne City after the A-League?
Can I be happy for Aurelio Vidmar after he called this city a pissant city?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Do we still hold grudges?
No, I'm salty. You
still hold grudges on the pissant city?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's no Aurelio's not returning as a GOAT.
Look, you hand me those resources and put me in that chair. I'm coaching a premiership.
Yeah. Okay.
That team, look, I hand Michael Petrillo more credit than Aurelio Vidmar because he set that team up. He set a culture there for anybody to walk into.
Yeah.
All they had to do was just be a uniting force.
Yeah.
And they would lead that side to a championship. So, well, Michael Petrillo, well done. Aurelio Vidmar.
They're the perennial chokers, though, aren't they? They're the bridesmaids. So,
not
get over the line. Against you, I would say your bitter rival. I don't think they'd have a bigger rival than Melbourne Victory. Goes a long way to giving you credit, especially after what happened. Was it last year or the year?
All right. So
scenes on the field.
That was at Amy Park.
Yeah.
29,000 people. Now, I understand because of AFL football season, it's hard to pick out Etihad.
Yeah.
But for two Melbourne teams, could they have done better?
Mate, they could have definitely done better. They could have taken that.
The record at Amy Park, yes.
Yeah, I reckon they could have taken that game anywhere in Australia and they would have got more than 29,000. Like those supporters travel.
Yeah.
There's no problem there. And if you had a stadium, if they were at Adelaide Oval, they would have filled up Adelaide Oval, no doubt.
Yeah, look at Adelaide. So we got 50,000 for us against the Wanderers. But again, it's booking because AFL season.
Of course. So you play on what you got, and Amy Park is probably the best viewing. Like Eddie had or William Marble. It's probably a little bit too big, and as far as spectator.
But I love to see because it's Melbourne are a sporting town.
Yeah,
so
they will, and they'll
pack it out.
Oh, absolutely, they'll pack it out. There's no doubt about it. They'll pack it out. And like I said to you, I guarantee if they'd gone anywhere in Australia and if it was anything that holds over 50, they would have packed it out because they both supported both the sides supporters travel. They do, and in numbers. So. Yeah, but
so it's not right. So you asked me about really going Vidmar. How do you feel about it?
Well, you know what? I'm a bit like you. I'm still don't like the pissant town comment. But
still have to endure that.
He's a home boy, and it's always good to see someone from this state succeed. Am I as happy as what I was for Ange? No, I'll be honest with you, but. It's still good to see him succeed, but I am a bit like you. I still remember the comment, and I'm not as salty as you though, but
Oh, look, I'm full of salt today.
Yeah. But and you're probably right about betrayal.
So, question without notice, because it's not on our run board up behind the camera here. Tottenham are on the verge of potentially replacing Ange Postecoglou.
Well, that's
Mistake?
mistake.
Mistake. We're on the same page there.
Yeah, definitely a mistake. Look, no one is going to succeed at that club. When your priority is to make sure Arsenal doesn't win anything, then your priorities are in the wrong place. Like we said last week, throw money at it.
Yeah,
if you can get some people in, you'll actually have some success. Ange's a dud. Let's face it, the man's not a dud. Everywhere he's gone, and I know that you might call them lower leagues, whether it's Australia or Japan or in Scotland. They're second level teams. You can say that, but he's had success.
But sometimes it's harder to build up from those levels because there's no money. You're dealing with players that are very similar. So when he started out at NPL level and worked his way up from there,
that's right.
He's worked bloody hard, and he had success at that.
He has, and the only place he hasn't won a championship was when he had the Australian team.
Look, do yourselves a favour. Go look up Ange Postecoglou's halftime address, pre-match address, full-time addresses. That guy knows how to deliver a message.
That's right. Yeah,
you go to war for him. He's
but most of them do. Look, most managers.
That should be given, but some are better than others. I'd have him in the top tier.
Yep,
and you understand why he's got the success.
And look, and if they do turf him, there'd be teams out there who'd have to be looking at it. Surely EPL sides that'd have to go, look, well, is he better than what we got?
Yeah, I was looking at
even
Manchester United.
Say
transfer news, and his name popped up to be linked if Tottenham sat.
Yeah,
they're going to replace him with Thomas Frank from Brentford.
Yeah,
I think it's a mistake.
Yeah,
they're heading in the right direction. He's just busted a big barrier for Tottenham, and that's winning a freaking trophy.
Yeah.
So surely you let him see where he can get to this season. That's it. Now that he's got,
you've got to give him got to give him the support. You just can't.
Yeah.
Just can't go. This is your team.
And
you can't expect him to win stuff in that league.
The fans were upset. The fans aren't upset anymore. They got what they wanted.
That's right.
They got their trophy.
And it helps that Arsenal come second.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, I'll tell you what, it might end up helping Arsenal to the title. Because I could potentially see Tottenham pushing to challenge for title. I'm not saying that they would win. I still think Man City will bounce back next year. I think Pep is
look,
you'll add a few pieces.
They'll be Man City will be up there. Chelsea, who knows?
Yeah, they're building.
They're building. So Arsenal are going to be thereabouts. Liverpool are going to be thereabouts.
I think Liverpool may have had their bit of a honeymoon shot this year.
You could have been,
and that's not again because you're our rivals.
Yeah, no.
But what your manager has done. His name's just slipped my head. Bald-headed man.
Yeah.
He's taken you guys and pushed you up that little bit. But it was off the back of some superstar performances from Mo Salah.
It was.
What stage does his legs fall at?
Well, look, he's going to leave or retire an absolute Liverpool legend, that man. Without a doubt.
No Saudi Arabia?
Well, he might head to Saudi Arabia. Yeah, he might end up there but his best will be behind him when he goes there.
Yep.
But yeah, look, much like what's his name, Ronaldo. So, but yeah, you're right. Mo was just huge, absolutely huge this year. So, it's going to be interesting. It'll be an interesting watch next year because we have a tendency to win something and then just go
fall away.
We've won it. Let's have a five-year hiatus and then we'll reload again and go for it again. Because the fans are happy, everybody's happy. You've achieved something.
And it feels like, again, Alexander-Arnold leaving to Real Madrid, there might be a little bit more change at Liverpool. So it might unsettle things a little bit. Just enough to just bring it down.
Just bring it down a notch.
If Arsenal had one or two pieces, they're pretty settled.
Yeah. Look, I still think they'll be thereabouts. Whether they finish second, third or fourth, they'll be Champions League bound next year. Like they're in the mix. There's probably only going to be about 6 sides in the mix, to be honest with you.
Look, it's not an EPL preview show, but I can tell you, I think Arsenal are the clear favourites for next season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be, like I say, it'd be an interesting watch because I think Man City are going to take the next step, and I think Chelsea are reloading and getting ready to go again. So, yeah.
Well, that season's not even close to starting. We've got one thing in its final stages.
Yeah.
And that's the NBA Finals. You got a question on the NBA Finals?
Just who you got. This comes from Rhino. Rhino wants to know who you got.
Can you go past Oklahoma?
Yeah, I was going to say. It's going to be a Thunder choke, I think. If they don't win it, it'll be a Thunder choke. You got a talent. You put the sides together and you put it. Pacers are match hardened now, I think. Oklahoma City, if this becomes a tough series, that's the only way I see the Pacers winning. It has to be physical.
Yeah.
When I say tough, it has to be physical. That's the only way I see the Pacers winning this.
And I think they know that. They'll come physical. My only question is, do they have enough talent to go the other way?
Yeah. But you know what? If you're hitting guys and they know that when they go up for the jumper or when they
just throw them off that a little bit.
It just throws them off that little bit. They think twice about maybe, driving to the rim and things like that. So
this week you'd be rolling out Detroit Pistons footage to them all week.
Well, I don't know. Go that far. I don't think they need to go full Pistons, bad boys. But I just think a little bit of physicality might go a long way to putting a few of the the Thunder players off, and then they can just see what happens.
Are you disappointed New York's not there? I am.
Well,
I wanted New York.
Not really. They celebrated. I don't know if you saw the footage where they were going F.
Yeah, of course. It's New York, Boston.
Like you won something. Like you won nothing, man. Like, what did you win? You didn't even win the division, for goodness sake. I mean, and you're freaking out. You beat Boston, and it's like, it meant nothing. Absolutely nothing.
It meant Boston weren't winning the championship. That's what it meant.
Well, that's fine. It's just Arsenal and Tottenham, is it? I didn't realise we had an Arsenal and Tottenham in the NBA.
Well, it looks like it.
Oh, my God. Like, it would have been different if they won the division. At least they could say, well,
you know what I'd love to see?
We made an NBA final.
I would love to see an Eastern Conference Finals, Philadelphia versus New York.
Anyway.
Let it burn it down, hey?
Yeah.
So, if Oklahoma win, because I reckon it's going to be 4-1. Scorelines?
Yeah, I was thinking, I was almost thinking sweep to maybe 4-1.
Yeah. So, shouldn't they win? Do they keep their pieces together? And how far can because this team is young. Do they lose the hunger? Where do you see it going? Because
I don't think they'll lose the hunger. I do think they'll lose some pieces.
Yeah.
Because I think the lure of the big teams, the Lakers, the Knicks, even Golden State, maybe Boston, might be looking for pieces, and they'd be easily picked off. Like this was a team that used to have Durant, Harden, and what was the third one? Quick.
Durant, Harden, and
Westbrook. Yeah. So this was this was the side that had that, and they couldn't keep them together, and yet they were talking multiple championships for those three if they could have kept them together. So so that's the question: is Oklahoma City going to be a good enough franchise for these guys to hang around? And my answer is no. I don't think.
But I mean, it depends their mindsets individually, and I don't know those players. I don't watch intrinsically to know and their personalities.
Yeah.
I just watch, keep an eye on things from the outside. If they know that they're on the cusp of something potentially great, if they stay together, do they want that?
It means nothing in Oklahoma City. If they can go to a big market.
You can go to a big market, but you can't buy what that team has right now. So
no, you can't.
That's the thing.
But you can definitely take it away and make it work for you in another city.
And I understand what your point is. All it needs is one piece to go, I'm out.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden bring someone in to replace that piece, and it's a different setup.
It is. It absolutely is. And if the Lakers come knocking or the Knicks come knocking and you've got a chance to play in LA or New York or Boston or,
For me, I've always
Dallas,
even stick it up their butt. You're a small city, then you take on that underdog mentality, and once you've got on top, you tear them to shreds.
Yeah.
So I hope that team sticks together and reigns chaos.
So what happened to Toronto after they won it?
Nothing. Oh, yeah, they fell apart.
That's it. What happened to Milwaukee after they won it? Fell apart.
But that's more of a case of Giannis. Yeah, that team was just.
But the pieces, look at what he had around him when they won the championship, and look what happened afterwards. So pieces leave because they now look and they have good seasons and other teams come looking and they offer you. Like, we're not talking minor stuff here. We're talking millions. Like, you jump from a $50 million contract to a $75, $80 million contract because teams think, well, this guy, here's the difference between the championship and not. And all of a sudden, and you don't even, and generally that one season is all you ever get.
Yeah.
And then there's that drop off. So you might still be a great player, but that drop off is enough to get you your money, or that season was enough to get you your money. You drop off and then they're stuck with you.
Do you know what I like about this team?
Around
it doesn't get blown out like last year's championship Celtics team. And I said to you, I did not have complete faith in that.
No, you didn't. You said
right
you
up until the championship. I think I called it one of the worst championship teams.
But
now, maybe that's unfair. I don't know.
Unfair. I think it was unfair.
But it's no surprise that when they lost Tatum this year, they fell apart.
Yeah.
And I don't see that with Oklahoma. So that's why I think if they can stick together, they'll continue.
But you're going to have to be in the right piece. You just can't bring in anything. I agree. So if they do, one of them does leave, and you're still going to have to replace it with something of equal value, because otherwise, if you start putting in big players here and there, it's not going to. They're not going to repeat. They're not going to do anything.
Yeah,
it'll be a one and done basically.
Yeah,
like it is. Well, like it was in Toronto, and like it was in Milwaukee.
It sounds like we're talking like it's done.
Well, this is a good thing. This is why I said the Pacers have to bring the hammer.
Yeah.
They've got to be prepared to go in physical, because if they don't, they're going to get blown out, absolutely blown out.
Before we hit the final shot, so we had Goats start the show. Let's have a monster finish the show. Did you see Montrezl Harrell sign with the 36ers before he signed? I didn't see it coming.
No, I didn't. No, absolutely not.
So there's a goat. There's a monster amongst the goat paddock.
Yeah.
I can't help but think, what is that team going to look like with Cotton and Harrell together?
Because it's going to be interesting, isn't it?
Harrell does share the ball.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be an interesting watch. So I totally agree with you. It's going to be, and then you throw in, AJ, DJ.
And then what can we get out of Humphries?
Exactly. And Humphries. And then,
I almost feel like he's almost, he doesn't have, as long as he's bringing that defensive pressure, whatever we get out of him is a bloody bonus. And his nights, there's going to be nights where you use him because, the opposition center's weak. So then you play through him, and as long as, because sometimes I feel with Isaac Humphries, he doesn't feel part of the team.
Yep.
It always looks like from the outside.
Yeah, I agree with you.
With his body language and whatnot.
I totally agree with you.
If he can understand that not every night he needs to start, but when it's his night to go, we go through him.
Yeah.
Then I tell you what, that team could be down.
Yeah.
And we've still got another import slot. And depending how soon they can get Bryce Cotton's citizenship.
Yeah.
Hey, salary cap in the NBL, it's a soft cap, so we pay a tax. Grant Kelly is prepared to just go well above that.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what could happen.
Yeah, well that's it. But they gotta make it happen.
Yeah.
You can't do all this work, you can't bring in all these guys and then just be another lackluster year.
Yeah, I don't think it will. I think
I agree with you.
Mike Kelly,
I don't think it will either.
Seems to know what he wants, and that connection with Cotton. I had no idea that 2015 he was his coach.
Yeah, he's coached
in Jazz.
Yeah,
and I think that was So rumors are that now Cotton's the highest paid player in NBL history. Yep. Yeah, fair enough. But I still believe that connection brought him here.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you're not putting him out of person.
It certainly didn't hurt. Yeah, to have him. Yeah.
So all right, you got final shot?
Who you got for your final shot?
Well, I went Crows to beat Brisbane.
That's not a final shot, right? That's a given.
No, it's not a given.
That's a
Brisbane champions and sitting top.
This is
against the Crows team that has only beaten one top 8 team. It's the Giants.
I'm calling you on that. I'd accept that if you were playing that game in Brisbane, but this is being played here.
Yeah, and we still haven't beaten a quality side. So look.
All right, I'll give
Crows to beat Brisbane.
Okay.
And then I'll give you a final shot. I'll add something on. Following week they'll beat Hawthorn and Tassie there.
All right, we could do that.
2-1.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I'm going to surprise you or not, but I'm going to go. I actually tossed up between 3 games and I settled on Suns to beat Geelong.
Oh, you're
joking.
Have you ever got my final shot?
In Geelong.
Geelong, yeah.
Suns to beat Geelong in Geelong.
Television.
Well, I think after that, debacle on the weekend, Hardwick is going to be so pissed off, and those boys are going to cop it, and they're going to come out with fire in their eyes. Talk about fake tough.
Yeah, carry on all
Talk about fake tough. This is going to be real tough. Suns to beat Geelong, and when I see you next week, I certainly want the pat on the back for the.
I'll tell you what. I'll give you a pat on the back. I'll put a port scarf on.
Okay,
whatever you want. It's not happening.
Yep.
But I'll say, and I'll support your argument a bit, where I think that the Suns could get Geelong into the midfield. So that's as far as I'm going to support that argument. And if they end up getting on top of Geelong sometimes has that ability where their midfield just doesn't fire.
Well, we saw that against GWS.
But I can't see Geelong coming back from their holiday in Perth, playing that same way as well. Chris Scott was screaming and yelling and carrying on at 3/4.
He can scream and yell all he wants.
So you've got a fired up Geelong and a fired up Hardwick cancel each other out, and that's why it's Geelong at home.
Yep. Well, we're going to find out, aren't we?
All right, close us up. I'm ready to go.
Well, did you hear the joke about the fart?
No?
It stank. Thank you, Lockie. See you next week.